Shalom and welcome to Inside Israel News, your source for unbiased and thorough analysis of Israeli news, politics, and current events in the Middle East. I'm your host, Mensch-Kight. It's been yet another exciting week in news for events in Israel, Israeli politics, and the Middle East. I'll dive right in by starting with Iran, your favorite subject and mine. Iran claims that Israel has been attacking their shipping since as recently or as early as 2019, late 2019. How Israel is doing it and this kind of thing, of course, the details are a little bit shady, but Iran claims that Israel has been damaging, sabotaging, and injuring its vessels since then. And, of course, Israel has claimed that Iran attacked an Israeli vessel as well. So freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz and the Arabian Gulf may be under some threat. And if this escalates, this could lead to a shooting war or, at the very least, some kind of naval undeclared war. Thanks to arrangements with Egypt, Israel has access to the Suez Canal and can thus send shipping around through the Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, Gulf of Oman over to the Arabian Sea, and could begin to patrol that area to protect its own shipping. And, of course, that would put Israeli vessels closer to Iranian vessels, and we'll see what happens there. But obviously, now that Israel has new allies in the United Arab Emirates and in Bahrain, Israel is going to be able to start to have a greater presence in the region for sure. In any case, the back and forth goes on. Iran claiming that Israel is damaging their vessels is not a surprise. Israel is responsible for everything from low birth rates to a lack of virility in men, according to Iranian state media. But at the end of the day, this could, this kind of agitation, this kind of escalation could lead to more trouble in the future. In a story with a curious twist, Turkey is changing its tune about its enmity with Israel, Egypt, and other allies of Israel, saying that they want some kind of reconciliation. Now, this because the government controls the media there and is able to control the narrative of what's being discussed on Turkish TV. As that kind of change of tune has happened in Turkish media, it has not gone without notice, that the government may be signaling a change in its direction. Now, the president of Turkey, who was at one time its prime minister, has risen to have vastly super democratic powers in the country and turned it into a presidential system. Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Erdogan is a militant and an Islamist, and he has inserted Turkey into events in Iraq and Syria, especially vis-a-vis the Kurds and the Kurdish situation there. Turkey has long been at odds with the Kurdish minority within its own country. But Turkey has also intervened in Libya as well. So there's an interventionist or a growing militancy in Turkey that's been a bit of a problem in the Middle East, needless to say. Well, they're trying to change tune and talk now about some kind of reconciliation. But this is the same government led by President Erdogan, who compared Israel to Nazi Germany. So how genuine this turnaround is not clear, but there may be something at play here. He may be trying to ruin Israeli and Egyptian relations with Greek Cyprus and with Greece, a long time enemy of the Turkish people and Turkey in their imagination, in any case, or trying to achieve some other end. It's also possible with the new alliance, the Abrahamic alliance, that Turkey has realized that their situation with Iran, Turkey is also antagonized by Iran and finds itself at odds with Iranian interests, that they may need to try to wiggle their way into that alliance, or at least into better graces with the members of that alliance, in order to try to build their own, protect their own defensive situation and strengthen their position. We'll see how it turns out, but when it comes to Turkey trying to reconcile with Israel, that's a little bit suspicious, and obviously the Israelis will be cautious and open but cautious when it comes to Turkish initiatives aimed at reconciliation. I'll be discussing the election more in just a minute, but to discuss the main election-related headline in Israeli news right now. In a recent interview, Bibi Netanyahu has said he will not accept any coalition agreement that involves a rotation in office with Naftali Bennett or anyone else while he serves as prime minister. So he's banking on the election either coming out in his favor, becoming a draw that leads to the need for a new election, or he'll just lose and his opponents will come to office. Nevertheless, this is a step. This is a major announcement in the election and the election process. Bibi is not going to accept the concept of a half win. As I described in the Bibi's game of dreidel, right, that he could win, he could have a half win where he has to share power with someone. He could have an inconclusive election where there will be a fifth election coming up soon, or he could lose. Well, he's getting rid of that half-win scenario. He's saying he's not going to accept a rotation in office. Now, if the situation is desperate and that's his only way to remain in office, might he still, at the very last minute, accept such a deal? That we can't say because we haven't gotten there yet. But he's not planning to, and that means that he's staking out a position on coalition negotiations before they even begin, that he's not going to tolerate that sort of thing. He sees this as a win or lose situation, and he's not going to accept anything less. More election coverage in just a minute. So it looks like Bibi is not interested in any kind of rotation in office as prime minister when he forms the coalition. And that is not entirely news. We know that Bibi would prefer it that way, but it's been an open question. He hadn't really shut down that possibility. But in that Channel 13 interview, he did come forth and say he has no plans to go there. So that's a signal for coalition negotiations for sure. Now, referring to his opponents, he said they would be a coalition of rotations because, of course, they have so many people who would be interested in serving as prime minister. Obviously, we had from last week that Yair Lapid has decided to take a back seat, that he doesn't plan to seek the prime minister's office, even though he is polling in second place. Yesh Atid is somewhere in the 17 to 19 seat range. But he's going to put his ambitions on the back burner to get rid of Bibi, and that is a sign that in coalition negotiations he may be willing to take a back seat, given differences in his popularity, that he's not as popular with right-wing voters for sure. We also have news that the far right wants a law protecting Bibi from prosecution as a condition of joining a coalition. That's the National Zionist Party. And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Bibi referred to that as a kind of a childish spin, that it wasn't necessarily going to be part of the coalition agreement, but it is certainly the case that Bibi wants some kind of immunity for the cases that are against him. Bibi said those cases against him were crumbling before our eyes, quote, and that he believes that any fair justice system would clear him of those charges. Nevertheless, he's still seeking a law that would give him broad immunity to those kinds of charges. When it comes to election politics, Ra'am, the UAL party, or United Arab List party, it's not the joint list that most Arab parties, but Ra'am is also called UAL at times, so you may see them on a poll as UAL. That's Ra'am. They're still polling just below the threshold, the 3.25% threshold. And when I say just below, I mean just below. A recent poll had them at 3.1%. That puts them literally just a 0.5% below where they need to be to clear the threshold. So if they could bump themselves up a couple of just 0.2%, maybe 0.25%, they would clear the threshold and win seats in the coalition. And they're not the only party teasing about the threshold either. I'll come back to that in just a second. In the interview on Channel 13, Bibi also ruled out serving with Ra'am in the coalition, that he wasn't interested in them joining. Now, this is the kind of statement that he might make before the election to help alleviate concerns on his side, among his supporters, that he would entertain having them in the coalition. But he could come back on that, go back on that after the elections are over and ask them to join the coalition, especially if he would otherwise fall short. However, Bibi has himself sought the nomination of an Arab party member in Likud, Nail Zawabi, whom I talked about in a previous episode, who's way down at 39th on the list, the Likud list, so not likely to be elected to the Knesset in this go-round. In any case, Bibi has himself been reaching out to the Bedouins, to the Druze, to various Arab constituents, seeking their votes, so he may not be looking to bring Ra'am into the coalition. In any case, right-wing voters are fairly uncomfortable. A majority of them do not want Ra'am or any Arab party in the government. So this is the next question then, is for those who oppose Bibi, what about the possibility of joint list joining the coalition temporarily just to get Bibi out of office? A lot of people on the left are equally uncomfortable about that prospect. One of the things that has happened, obviously, Benny Gantz, who is attempting to paint himself as a center-left politician, has said that he would not serve in any government that includes Balad. Balad is one of the joint list parties. It's extremely anti-Zionist, extremely anti-Israel, violently, their rhetoric is violently anti-Israel. So he doesn't want to sit and govern with them. And obviously, that makes center-left voters uncomfortable too. Obviously, that's not going to be popular with center-right voters for sure. But the polls show that those who support the general anti-Bibi coalition are not very comfortable with the idea of getting support from the Arabs to cast Bibi out of office. So that's a lot of what's going on in the election system at the moment and in the news regarding the election. What we see here, again, Naftali Bennett seems to be, although he is not thrown in his lot with Bibi. He's not one of Bibi's, let's say, natural allies, right? He is still someone who's likely to join a coalition with Bibi. He hasn't ruled out the possibility, and he's going to ask for a lot of concessions in order to do that. That makes him something of a kingmaker going forward. And as kingmaker, he can ask for a lot of things. Bibi's telling him not to ask for a rotation in office, of course, because Bibi has already ruled that out. The other big news in Israeli politics right now is that there's been a shift in the third and fourth places. They've traded places, that is, in the polls. And that is that Yamina has risen above New Hope. So New Hope is led by Gideon Sa'ar. He's seen as the main opposition candidate to Bibi Netanyahu, who is a center-right politician. He's made a career of being a little bit right and a little bit left of Bibi at different times in Likud when it suited him to be a little bit left or a little bit right of Bibi, and now is trying to be the alternate Bibi, someone that right-wing voters are supposed to trust to lead the government, but he's not Bibi. With, of course, in order to become prime minister, he would need the support of a lot of far-left parties. So that's asking a lot right there. So I'm not sure how that narrative is going to play out. In any case, Yamina is now polling above New Hope. So Yamina is led by Naftali Bennett. He's the kingmaker potentially for a Netanyahu coalition and could give Bibi 4 more years in office. And obviously he can ask for a lot of concessions in the process of building the coalition in order to achieve that end. But he is now in third place, and Gideon Sa'ar, the main opponent to Bibi, has fallen to fourth place. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, especially when we do have the final election results. If that's the case, if he's in fourth place, it's going to make it very difficult for him to launch himself into the prime minister's office. Meanwhile, Naftali Bennett continues to gain support. There are some polls out there that show New Hope below 10 seats. I'm not especially fond of those pollsters, and polls every day in Israel, new polls are published, and I like to look at them and look at the trends. But New Hope has lost support, let's just say. They are trending downward. And we look at the racing analogy, if you will. The winner of the race is not always the person who's in the lead in the final lap. The winner of the race is whoever's moving the fastest in the final straightaway, right? Who has the most acceleration, the most momentum, who's moving, because they might just jump out there in the lead and get the checker flag. Well, here we are in the last 2 weeks before the election, and it looks like New Hope is collapsing, trending downward in the polls. Some polls have them below 10 seats. A lot of polls have them at 10 or 11. So the downward trend for Gideon Sa'ar is not good for Gideon Sa'ar and his opportunity to unseat Bibi from the coalition. And as Bibi noted, it's going to be a coalition of rotations because there are a lot of people in that governing group that would be opposing Bibi, and they're all going to want a chance at the big office. So it would be kind of a mess in terms of Israeli politics. The one time a rotation agreement was agreed to, it was between two parties in the unity government in 1984, between then Likud leader Yitzhak Shamir and then Labor leader Shimon Peres. And those two were able to get on together and do 2 years of Peres and 2 years of Shamir. That is the only rotation that's been successful. The last rotation agreement, of course, from May of 2020, when Bibi and Gantz formed the current coalition that fell apart back in December, leading to new elections. That agreement was that Bibi would govern for about 6 months, and then after that, it would be taken over by Gantz. But of course, Bibi made sure that the budget didn't pass, the government did not survive, and so he remained in office and did not pass off the rotation to Gantz. So this would be unprecedented in Israeli politics. Unprecedented is something that happens often in Israeli politics. It's not to say it can't happen, but it's beginning to look less and less likely. All right, let's talk about poll numbers. We have a new poll out. This is from Channel 12. Channel 12 is a right-wing, center-right-wing news channel, so it's a fairly objective poll. I want to say last time I went with Haaretz, so this time I decided I'd go kind of center-right, and that way we kind of balance out left and right polls. And again, with the proportional system, we're not talking about precision here, whether as in a direct election in the U.S., say for a governor or a mayor, where if someone gets one vote more than the other, they end up winning and the other completely loses. We're talking about a proportional system here where if Likud gets 28 seats, 29 seats, 30 seats, it's kind of in a ballpark. And these polls tell us that Likud, let's say, is polling in the 30-seat region rather than in, say, 40 seats. And that tells us a lot about how things are likely to develop after the election. So looking at this poll, this poll was conducted March 10th, very recent. It has Likud at 28 seats out of 120. Yesh Atid, that's Yair Lapid's party, at 19 seats. Yamina, Naftali Bennett's party, in third place at 13 seats. Strong showing. There have been a couple of wild polls out there that have shown Yamina at 15, 16 seats. But the more, I want to say the safer and more reliable polls, in my opinion, you're welcome to believe whatever polls you like, show him kind of in the 13, 14 seat range. And so this poll is right there in that ballpark. New Hope, led by Gidon Sa'ar, the opponent to Bibi Netanyahu, is at 11 seats in fourth place, right? Followed by Joint List, the three Arab parties that are remaining in the Arab Joint List at 9 seats. Shas, the ultra-Orthodox Sephardic party, at 8 seats. United Torah Judaism, the ultra-Orthodox Ashkenazic party, at 7. Yisrael Beitenu, the secular right party led by Avigdor Lieberman, formerly the Russian secular right party, is at 7 seats. Labor is at 6, led now by Merav Michaeli. Blue and White, led by Benny Gantz, who used to be the one favored to be the alternative to Bibi, is at 4 seats. Meretz is at 4 seats. That's the far-left peace and protest party, basically. And 4 seats for the National Zionist Movement. Again, Ra'am, the UAL, polling just below the threshold. Well, what we see here, then, is that 3 parties, not one, but 3 parties are teasing at the threshold just above, and 1 party is teasing at the threshold just beneath. Blue and White, Meretz, Religious Zionists, or National Zionists, the far-right party, extreme right party, if you will, and Ra'am are all right at the threshold. So any one of these parties could vanish, literally vanish from the political map. If voters who would vote for Benny Gantz, let's say, abandon him and decide, and not even a great number of them, maybe 0.5%, go and vote for Yesh Atid, led by Yair Lapid, instead, then look what will happen. He'll fall, Benny Gantz falls below the threshold, and he's out. He's done. He's finished. Same thing with Meretz, with Merav Michaeli, who is being very active and very, let's just say, she's making herself heard, as I mentioned in the last podcast, getting her word out there to lead the left. If a few percentage, even 0.1%, go from Meretz over to Labor because they like Michaeli's work, then Meretz could disappear from the Knesset as well. And as for the National Religious Zionists, they're not a very popular movement to begin with. A coalition of several far right parties, as I've described before, and they are, again, at 4 seats. So they're really necessary if Bibi is going to form a government. If they fall below the threshold and disappear from the Knesset, Bibi may find himself unable to find the seats to win an election. On the other hand, Meretz and Blue and White, if one or, God forbid, both of them should fall below the threshold, Gideon Sa'ar and Yair Lapid and the anti-Bibi coalition, they're going to be up a creek. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to do anything. And Ra'am is a wild card out there. If Ra'am, UAL, should find a way to win enough, get just enough votes to clear the threshold and earn seats in the Knesset, could they throw in with the anti-Bibi coalition? Could they throw in with Bibi? If Bibi fell just short of a majority and it was the only way for him to form a government, he could maybe seek them out. So who knows how that's going to go. So looking at these poll numbers here, just assuming it goes this way, so Blue and White, Meretz, and National Religious earn seats in the Knesset, but Ra'am does not. When we look at it that way, we're looking at Bibi and his pro-Bibi coalition, his natural coalition, let's say, at 47 seats, the anti-Bibi coalition that they can easily put together of center-left and center-right, right-wing Israeli parties would have about 51 seats, still shy of, both of them both shy of a majority. And then you have Yamina out there with Naftali Bennett, and he is not saying he's going to join either at this point. And if he joined Bibi in this, that would give Bibi 60 seats, precisely, half the Knesset, just one short of a majority. So maybe Ra'am could make up the extra seats. But again, this is a poll. When voter turnout is done, Likud could end up with a 29th seat, and it could literally be just that gives them enough seats to have a majority. Or religious Zionists could have a surprisingly high turnout and get a 5th seat, and then that would give it. So you never quite know. So this isn't precise, but it's looking like there's a good chance that Bibi and Naftali Bennett can form a government and have a sustainable coalition if Bennett and Bibi can reach an agreement. And as we've seen there, Bibi's already kind of maneuvering ahead of Bennett, saying that he's not going to be doing a rotation. And Bennett's talk about being prime minister means that maybe he's looking to sit down with Gideon Sa'ar, because if we look at these election results, the anti-Bibi coalition is at 51 seats. Bennett could sit down with Sa'ar and say, hey, I'll give you enough seats to have a majority and we'll get rid of Bibi, but it's going to cost you. I'm going to have to be someone who gets the big office for a little while. And who knows? I'm not sure he's going to do that. That's not his natural coalition. And looking at this anti-Bibi coalition, I mean, you have parties, far left peace parties like Meretz and far right parties in there, like Yisrael Beitenu, granted secular right, and it's not as far right, let's say, as National Zionist. I would generally peg them just a little bit to the left of Likud, if I had to, on the political spectrum. But they're not going to want to sit in a coalition with Meretz. That's not going to be comfortable. So this coalition, if it comes together with Gideon Sa'ar at its head, with a rotation with Bennett, or rotation with Lapid, or all three of them, God forbid, that coalition is not going to be very stable. It's going to fly apart faster than a Yugo making a left turn at 40 kilometers an hour. So that may be how quickly that coalition falls apart. Now, Bibi, in theory, if he loses, could have to go face the charges against him, which will take time for the trial to go on. But who knows? He may be able to survive and continue to lead Likud and just sit back and wait for that coalition to fly apart. And there will be Gideon Sa'ar, something like Daffy Duck, still holding the steering wheel of a car that's fallen apart around him, and is riding along on the seat, that's disappeared, still in the sitting position, looking around like, that government fell apart really fast, and what's my next step? But so there's a chance that even if they win, Bibi could come back afterward. But we will see. There's a lot of unpredictability at this point. One of the unfortunate things about this kind of proportional system and the way that this has become so personal about Bibi is that one of the positives, I want to say, of a proportional system is its ability to moderate and nuance politics a little bit. For example, just if Bibi weren't the issue here, let's just imagine a scenario where, say, Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid goes to Bibi and says, hey, I'll join your coalition if you'll bring your government over to the center left. You'll moderate your policies, and we'll address some of the social issues that are a problem in Israel, right? And Bibi would look at that and say, well, that's quite a stand to make. Obviously, that's a big party, Yesh Atid, so they would offer a lot of votes that would help him get in that direction, not necessarily politically aligned with him, but if he believed the coalition would be stable enough and could really find a good rhythm that could go 3 or 4 years, that would be a good coalition that could moderate the otherwise right-wing government. And this is essentially what happened in 2013. Yair Lapid joined the government with Bibi, and it was a more center-left government. But it wasn't very stable because the left was agitating to get rid of Bibi, and as a result, by late 2014, it had fallen apart. Kind of like that Yugo I was just mentioning. And that failure is still fresh in everyone's mind. An unfortunate thing. But again, it's a positive of proportional systems that you can have that kind of moderation. Likewise, in terms of political opportunism, if, say, Gideon Sa'ar had an open mind and said, hey, I'll join a coalition with you, Bibi, and give you enough seats to have a majority if you'll retire at the end of the term and, put me in charge of Likud, endorse me as a successor. And kind of keep that door open to some kind of rapprochement, some kind of reconciliation between the two men that could lead Sa'ar to succeed him. At this point, there's a lot of bad blood there because a lot of things have been said that cannot be unsaid. But nevertheless, you're looking at that situation, you're just thinking all of the positives about such a system, all of the benefits that could sort of nuance the government to the center left or provide political opportunities for new leaders who are aspiring to the big office. They've all kind of gone to the wind. At this point, the only one really benefiting from the proportional system at this point is Naftali Bennett, who is the kingmaker. He's holding himself out there, siding with no one. He's friend nor foe to all of these guys. And based on the election results, he can find the very best deal for himself in his own sort of political opportunistic approach. Then should he have a crack at the big office? Or is he instead going to join with Bibi and kind of sit in the back, take himself out of the limelight a little bit, but have a stable coalition that goes 4 years and does a lot for his constituents? Obviously, he can trust that Bibi will do a lot for his constituents because it's a center-right government. But at the same time, he would be in a much better position personally if he had a rotation in office or something that could be offered by the opposition. What will happen? We will see. First, we need the results of the election, and then we'll need to go into the coalition building process. So coming up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the coalition building process so you have some idea what to expect. And, of course, you'll hear a lot more about it after the election as each little twist and turn in the threading of this coalition is taken, and they slowly sew together a government of some sort, or perhaps the whole process fails and another election will be called. Who knows? All right, the coalition process is something that begins well before the election, and we're starting to see some of the maneuvers that are being taken right now. Who will accept a rotation in office? Who does and doesn't want a rotation in office as prime minister? Who's going to accept what policies in a coalition? What parties would you be willing to sit in coalition with? So some of this is there. But to a large extent, the real process of building the coalition begins right after the election. And that's where everyone kind of has a firm number of seats that they're going to have. Now, election day, we're going to have semifinal results. We'll have most of the numbers counted in Israel. But as last-minute ballots come in and the final count is taken, the numbers will shift just a little bit. And so you'll get one seat this way or one seat that way. Oftentimes, the final results we get the day of the election, or the day after the election, I should say, are pretty close to final. Right, we're pretty good on that. But at the same time, there'll be a little bit of a shift. And parties are able to make agreements with each other to round up. So, for example, if my party is running and we get just enough percentage that I get 4 seats, but I have a few extra votes, but they just don't round up to the next seat, I can make an agreement with another party and say, hey, if my seats won't round up to a new seat, that those votes can go over to the next party, and that party can use those to round up to another seat. And so sometimes that kind of thing happens. And this is generally among parties that are relatively favorable to one another. In any case, the final results will then eventually be known within about a week of the election. It usually just takes a few days to get this kind of final numbers out. And again, the final count isn't necessarily important. It's that final proportionality. Who cleared the threshold and who has how many seats relative to the other parties. Right. Then begins the formal process of swearing in the new Knesset and at that point holding the recommendation as to who is going to be the new prime minister, who is recommended. And so a certain number of parties will vote to recommend, if you will, to the president who they believe should be prime minister. And it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. All the parties backing Gideon Sa'ar right now have about 51 votes. And if the parties in the Arab list, or even just one of those parties, let's say, should decide to go ahead and get in on that. Let's say they decide they're going to recommend Gideon Sa'ar as prime minister, then that could add a few votes to that. Likewise for Bibi, he's running at about 47, 48 seats right now in terms of his natural coalition, the parties most likely to form easily into his coalition. But what will Naftali Bennett do? If he recommends Bibi, then Bibi will probably get the first go at forming a coalition. If he chooses not to, if he just kind of stands out and says, no, we're not recommending anyone for prime minister, which is his right as party leader, well, that could lead to perhaps Gideon Sa'ar being given the first go at forming a government. Usually that there's a 30-day period during which negotiations take place, and if after the 30-day period no government has been formed, if there is some hope that a government could be formed, they can extend that 15 more days out to 45 days. But at that point, if no government has been formed, usually you go to new elections. As we've seen in the past elections, though, President Reuven Ruby Rivlin has also given the opposition an opportunity to form a government. So he could also then, as president, exercise some discretion, a little bit of discretion that the Israeli presidency holds, to offer the opposition candidate 30 days to form a government. And that's kind of how we've gone back and forth in these different elections that have taken place up to this point. The process of forming a coalition in terms of the formal, I want to say, public process, there's a lot of, you're going to have a lot of people talking to the media, and there'll be a lot of statements made as they maneuver toward these things, trying to figure out who's going to be in and who's going to be out and that kind of thing. So there's sort of a public side of it, but a lot of it takes place behind closed doors. There's a lot of quiet negotiation. And in that process, it's a matter of parties basically figuring out how they're going to sit in government. Now, we do have something like that over here in the U.S., a little bit, where we have a little bit of horse trading over who's going to get what committee assignments in the Senate or the House or what have you, who's going to get what cabinet seat for new presidents. There's a little bit of something like it, but not quite as formalized as in multi-party proportional systems. So there's a lot of trading there. The goal, of course, is for the candidate for prime minister and that person's party to reach what we term in I want to say civic speak, political science speak, the minimum majority coalition. And that is the smallest number of parties that can join together in order to achieve a majority of the parliament. And the way you do that in the coalition building process is, again, through this sort of horse trading. We've seen, could there be a rotation in office? Obviously, when the two major parties come together in a lot of instances, for example, the case in 1984 when there was a hung parliament and Labour and Likud came together, there was a rotation in office. That is one possibility, but a lot of times parties, especially smaller parties, will opt for negotiating instead of a rotation for a high seat in the cabinet. So if I'm the leader of the number 2 party in the Knesset, let's just say, and I'm sitting down to negotiate with Bibi, and I sit there and I say, well, if you make me foreign minister, and I get to be basically the Secretary of State here in the U.S., I get to be the head of the diplomatic office, and I get to go out and meet with foreign leaders and what have you. I'll take that, and in exchange for that, and let's say my party wants the education ministry, I'll join the coalition and we'll be able to sit together. And Bibi sits there and says, I can make you foreign minister, but education ministry, that's a little bit much. How about in addition to that, we'll give you the transportation portfolio? And I could then sit there and, oh, well, okay, I'll be foreign minister. That's big. That's a big concession. Maybe we'll take transportation this time around. So there's a lot of that. The legislative priorities, budget priorities, a lot of other things are contemplated in this process. So a lot of the initial policy of the coalition is set here. Some of it isn't, and obviously there's flexibility. Emergencies will come up and that kind of thing, and a lot of that is going to be handled by who is where. Right. So if you have a coalition where, somebody is sitting as a foreign minister who is, let's say, a dove, right, and let's say the prime minister is a little bit more hawkish, when they're sitting in the cabinet meetings, they're going to be voting as a cabinet to make decisions, and you'll have the dovish foreign minister say, no, let's not do this, let's not do that, and the hawkish prime minister arguing, yeah, we should go do this, we should take action right now and hit this target or not hit that target. And so the structure of how that is brought together, the coalition, who's sitting in what offices is important. Who the defense minister is a very important thing. Who the justice minister is, those are very important things. Ministry of Interior especially, one that's very important and near and dear to the hearts of the ultra-Orthodox because it handles issues of conversion and immigration, right? Who is accepted as an immigrant to Israel. So that's a lot of stuff that they will end up negotiating over. And ultimately, when parties agree, they sit down and, we'll have this ministry, or we'll have that ministry, or we'll have this budget priority, we'll have these legislative priorities, and then they sit in the government. So the major party that has the broader, let's say, national interests, like Likud, which represents broad demographics who are on the center-right, will then have to make concessions, say, to the ultra-Orthodox who have more narrow interests. They're concerned mostly about their own special privileges, the education budget for their schools, social spending on their constituents and that kind of thing. And so those will become a higher budget priority or legislative priority to protect all those things and finance them, as you can see in the coalition process. And enter, your kingmaker. In this case, Naftali Bennett is looking a lot like the kingmaker. He can ask for a lot of things. So when it comes to budgeting, he can ask for big expenditures on things that are important to his constituents. He can ask for legislative changes that will benefit his constituents and things of that nature. And so you get that sort of situation, and that's essentially how these parties come together. And finally, when they reach an agreement and they have the minimum majority coalition, Parliament will meet, they will vote, and when 61 plus votes have voted for someone to serve as prime minister, then the government is officially formed. But again, between that officially recommending to the president whom we'd like to have, whom each party would like to see as prime minister, and the formal swearing in of the coalition, that majority vote, there's a lot of horse trading. And it does go back to that old saying that people, laws are like sausages. Everybody likes to have one, but, you'd hate to see how they're made. It's a sickening process to watch the way sausages are made. Well, that's something similar with these coalitions. Everybody wants to have a governing coalition, but there's a lot of sleaze and a lot of horse trading and a lot of, dark smoke-filled rooms where decisions are made behind the scenes that decide what the coalition is ultimately going to do. More details on that as we go into the coalition building process after the election. But you can see now where the parties are situated, some of the last-minute statements on who's going to do what, who's willing to entertain what concessions and that sort of thing, and who's not, and who's looking to serve in which coalition and who's not. So there we are. With that, I will say lehitrot. Goodbye. אולי נפליגה בספינות מחוף אילת עד חוף שער ועל המשחטות הישנות יטעינו תפוחי זהב כל זה אינו משל ולא חלום זה נכון כאור בצהריים כל זה